Hi guys, Yuki here, back with Seduce Me Too. It's been a while since I've actually uploaded anything. It's been about 2 weeks and about a week since I actually recorded anything. But you should probably see the upcoming, well, no, it's probably up. The other 2 parts should be up already. Those I did not last, no, I did them last week. Yep, I recorded them last week. So yeah, just get back into this and let's go. My heart stopped at the sound of Diana's voice, more so from the moan than that somehow reached my ears. I turned to where the sound came from, realizing the direction. The library? I rushed over and quickly pushed the door open, running inside. What I saw made my heart tear instantly in two. On the ground were Diana and James, both in demon form, embracing each other. James had his face buried in Diana's neck as she clawed at his back, arcing against him and moaning in the air. No. This couldn't be real. This wasn't. Before I could scream, time seemed to freeze, causing the room and world around me to become still. I looked around, realizing that I still couldn't move, that I could still move, and turned away from the sight.
Do you know why I am showing this to you, human?
Because you want to separate James and me? To make me feel bad? Oh no. Be careful with this. Yeah. If this was the angel's attempt to prove something, it was sick and twisted. There was no reason to show this to me, especially when the one I was marrying was engaging with a woman who had wanted to take him away.
This was the time when Rystra was destined to return to the Abyssal Plains. Isaiah would have convinced him to go home, and they would have consummated their engagement before returning to take their birthrights.
No.
It is the truth. The only event that stopped it from happening was your voyeurism and intrusion.
I will not let him go.
How selfish. Humans are all selfish creatures. But that is to be expected when safety is handed to them on a silver platter.
I'm pretty sure that's the least things that's happened. I mean, there's the fact that we got transported to the demon world, and before then we had to deal with Malix, and one, I guess, dimension, we got killed by him. Or that's what I'm calling the alternate endings, I guess. And I don't know. I don't know what to say anymore. Just meh. The angel was toying with me, and I despised hearing every word it spoke. I turned back around and focused my attention on James, knowing that this was fake and remembering the real scenario.
Do you understand the full consequences of your actions?
What's done is done. You can't change the past. I regret nothing. Upon my final word, the room went black and began to reek of blood. I started to gag and cover my mouth and nose at the horrid smell. What was happening now? Where did the angel take me? I followed Diana's voice to see a crack of light slowly open, revealing Diana. Her face was painted with worry and concern, but upon opening the door, her expression shifted from concern to absolute broken shock. From the light of the door, I was able to finally see the room I was in. Blood covered every surface, gore decorated every inch, and I was standing a couple of feet from the center, where 3 objects laid. Barely coated in blood, the center were 2 broken adult-sized crowns and a smaller crown, large enough to barely fit a newborn's head. Diana's eyes darted through the room, both in disbelief and utmost horror. She barely forced herself to step into the room, dropping to her knees in front of the items and bringing them to her chest.
No! No!
My heart broke at the sight of Diana. Tears were streaming down her face as she clutched the crown across her chest.
Your selfishness cost a kingdom their beloved rulers, and a daughter her only family.
I couldn't say anything. I wanted to fight and shout back that I still didn't regret taking James away, but seeing Diana completely broken silenced any will to speak.
I see that you're beginning to understand.
What's done is done. I remember Diana's voice echoing in my memory. She had moved on and was building the rebellion to eradicate the Demon Lord. As terrible as it was, this was the inciting incident that gave Diana the motivation to destroy the Demon Lord. I looked away from Diana, no longer wanting to see her grieve, and glared into the ceiling. The past cannot be changed. We try to be philosophical here.
The past is a reminder of our mistakes.
The past is a memory to look back upon, not to bury yourself within. Before my eyes, the room vanished once again, and I found myself surrounded by flames. What the?
Burn everything to the ground!
I looked around, trying to find the source and direction of the voice. This was just an illusion, but the heat of the flames seemed too real to ignore or shake off.
This was the last thing many lives were forced to see before dying at the hands of the madman Demon Lord.
Stop it! I gripped my head, shutting my eyes tightly. I didn't want to see anymore. I didn't want to be here any longer. If this was the angel's torture, this was truly unbearable.
Do you not see the price of your selfishness? You are the sole reason why millions of lives have been lost. You are the sole reason why an entire world is burning. Your love causes death. Your love will do nothing but bring you pain and suffering for all of eternity. Every minute you hold on to this false hope is another child dying, another kingdom falling, another battle waged. Give him up.
Never! All at once my head became filled with cries and screams of the people I didn't know of. Pain from men, women, and children echoed my mind as I gripped at my head, wanting it to stop. The heat around me was unbearable. I could barely stand it. I love him! No, this wasn't happening. I needed to get out of here. I shouted to the skies, knowing the angel would hear me. However, I rushed forward through the flames surrounding me, hoping to break free somehow. What I managed to do was break through some sort of glass wall, destroying the world around me.
Love!
I fell to the floor, surrounded by shattered glass. Shaking my head, I quickly looked up, recognizing the sight before me from a nightmare. James was bolted to a wall with a burnt cross over his chest. He stared wide-eyed at me, uncaring of the bubbling heat dancing over the new scar as cloaked figures turned their heads toward me. I didn't have to look at them to know that they were angels. From what I knew, they had holy magic that could disable demon magic, so fighting with any form of magic I knew was not a good idea. However, I was human. I had pure physical force. I quickly jumped back. Close it around you. And squared off, ready to take on my husband's captors, but we haven't even got married yet. In an act of supreme rage, James's body began to glow an intense gold color, the light flickering around his body like a raging flame.
Enough!
Within a matter of seconds, the light suddenly engulfed the room, blinding everyone in it. I covered my eyes with my arms, trying to block the light to no avail. As it finally faded, I looked up to see James in his demon form with his eyes fully glossed in gold.
This ends now!
The cloaked figures quickly conjured chains in their hands, but not fast enough to avoid forming a familiar-looking gold pistol in his hand and shooting down his attackers. What shocked me was how they fell. Instead of them falling to the ground, as a bullet ripped through the cloaks, the fabric burnt away and the ash vanished into the air as if blown away by wind.
Filthy demon! Your acts shall not go unpunished!
Send every angel in heaven at me! I will not let you touch her again!
Taking the chance, I rushed over to James and wrapped my arms around him at last. My body felt at ease while holding him as he wrapped his free arm around my waist and held me close. I could feel power radiating off his skin, tickling my nerves. As a large gold pentagram appeared at our feet, a third, cloaked being stepped up from the far end of the room, stepping over the glass I had broken through and fallen on. James tightened his grip around me and aimed at the figure.
You cannot escape your destiny.
Technically, you guys are breaking the rules and doing that on your own. Because you choose your own destiny, not people around you choose it for you. And that very being, I'm assuming, is James's mother. I mean, it's not like we have actually heard about her except from like the first one, but I'm still standing on that theory. As it finished, James fired a shot at the angel. The bullet ripped into the cloak, but the figure did not die like its companions. James did not seem to care.
That was your one warning.
We do not fear you.
Come after her again, and I will teach you the meaning of fear.
With an angry snarl that reverberated through the room, the cloaked figure bent forward towards us, showing its veiny hands. From its back sprouted 2 large and proud white wings, riddled with 100 of gorgeously placed feathers. However, before the angel could lunge it for us, we sank into the ground at last, escaping into darkness. James gripped me tightly as I held onto him, guiding me through the void we were in. Into the darkness we both sank. I shut my eyes, scared of what we were going to do, but knowing that everything was alright now that James was with me. I was safe in his arms. When we finally came out of the dark, we were standing in the middle of the war room, where everyone seemed to have gathered.
Whoa! Hey, what the hell? Oh my god, you're alright.
James and I looked around, seeing the shocked and surprised faces of the rebel leaders, the Incubi brothers, and their wives. While looking to Diana, her face instantly melted from surprise to anger. James released me as Diana suddenly marched at him, staring at her with a blank expression. The expression stayed on Diana as Diana slammed her palm across his cheek, the sound reverberating through the room.
Hey! Do you both realize how long you have been missing?
Well, no.
2 days.
Do you realize how many assets we have spent in preparing to find you both?
Diana!
Do not apologize! I don't want to hear it!
Diana turned and walked back to her spot, crossing her arms and curling her shoulders over herself.
If you two had died, this war would have been for nothing.
Oh wait, that's not me, that's Faye. I frowned, understanding what she meant. Because of us, the war had happened, so we had to take responsibility. However, now was not the time to get angry. Diana, we're back now. That's all that matters. Once again, the silence took control of the room before Diana took a deep breath and let out a sigh, relaxing at last. The very last thing I wanted was for Diana to explode about this.
Were they angels?
Yes.
Did you kill them to escape?
2 of them.
Diana turned her head and looked at James in a slight surprise.
You realize that killing angels of heaven will put a bounty on your head, correct?
I silently gulped, remembering the angels swearing to punish James for what he had done. James didn't seem to be fazed as he wrapped an arm around me.
Let them come. I will not let them hurt her again.
They didn't do anything to me. I mean, I guess psychologically. My cheeks warmed a bit as I looked up at James, seeing him smile lovingly at me. I smiled back, seeing the deep and pure emotions he felt for me within his eyes. He would protect me with all his might, and I would be with him for as long as I could. With a sigh, Diana rubbed her temple and turned around, glaring at me and James. Her look could kill, but I knew that beneath her anger, she was relieved to see us. In a strange way, I could see the amusement behind her hard glare.
Well, now that everyone is accounted for, we are set. We are ready to march on to the Demon Lord's castle and end this once and for all. Are you two prepared?
The realization of the date hit me. If we had been missing for 2 days, then we were an evening away from heading out to the final battle. Fear quaked my core for a moment, but my embrace with James shook it away.
We leave in the morning?
That's the plan. Get some rest, you two. You both need it.
Without letting anyone interfere or interrupt her, Diana turned and left the room. I smiled a bit, knowing that deep in her heart she cared about us. The rebels left as well, most likely going to prepare themselves.
Dude, what's on your chest?
Sam pointed at the cross on James's chest, making everyone look at it. I bit my lip, but James waved his hand dismissively.
A battle scar, nothing more.
A scar that still needs to be examined.
Eric walked along with Damien, and both demons began to investigate it.
All right. Love, you can go back to the room if you want. I'll be there shortly.
I nodded before... Sudden exhaustion hit me hard. I yawned and waved to the others before walking out of the room, making my way towards our bed. I finally returned to our room and flopped onto the bed, letting the events of my time at the Abyssal Plains replay in my mind. I was trapped here, hunted by angels, and soon enough I was about to go marching into battle against the Demon Lord for my freedom. The more I thought about it, the more surreal the feeling became. I was going to be in a room, meeting a powerful adversary face to face, and set myself free of the curse he brought down upon me. Add that I was captured by angels and almost killed by them, made the time I spent away from the demon world very wild. Human world very wild. It felt like a dream, but I knew it couldn't have been one. This was too vivid, too real to even come close to a dream. As James entered the room at last, I smiled and stood, walking over and wrapping my arms around him as he returned my embrace.
God, I was so worried about you.
And I was worried about you. We held each other, locked in silence and unable to say anything more. We had been in a heavy predicament, and we had escaped. Sure, we were probably branded now, but we escaped nonetheless. All we could do in that moment was hold each other and listen to our synchronized heartbeats. At the thought of tomorrow danced in my head, I began to fear even more. Was I ready to go into battle? Was James? Were any of us, for that matter? We were about to walk into the final battle of a world war. Would we survive? Would I live to see James afterward and feel his embrace again? Tomorrow brought too many questions to think about, and I became frustrated and scared. Wait, how long have I been recording? Only 17 minutes. Whoa, if things go well, we might actually finish it in 4 parts. Or in this part, more like it. I guess we will continue from here. Make love to James. I needed to hold him and treat the night like it was the last night of the world. Tomorrow was unpredictable, but tonight was guaranteed. I slowly glided my hands to cup his head, looking up at him and staring deep in his eyes. I felt his hands gently slide across my waist, softly grasping my hips as he stared patiently at me. A rush of courage ran through my body as I gently pulled him forward and captured his lips with my own. My eyes fluttered closed as I took a deep breath, taking in his scent, his warmth, and his love for me. I was blessed to have this man as my own, and to see him claw through destiny to remain with me and be mine. As he slid his hands up my back and hugged me closer to him, I could tell he felt the same. My head tilted back as James began to trail kisses down my chin and onto my neck, causing me to arc back a bit and press my chest against his. As his teeth lightly grazed my skin, a wild shiver ran up my spine. His hands tightened around my waist and tugged me hard against his body as he ravished my neck and shoulder in kisses and licks. My own hands began to wander his hair, combing through his black locks. For one more night, I would forget about everything except the feeling of this man and I making love. It wasn't long before James and I wound up in bed with me straddled over his lap, with my back to his chest, us in only our bare minimums. James marked every inch of my body with his lips and tongue, desperate to make me quit in his arms from the pleasure. I couldn't help but let myself grind over the hardening length in his boxer briefs, my own core lightening in desire for him and slightly craving to just ravish and ride. However, James' hands trailed along my body, making me submissive to his touch and guidance. I was left to moan and mew, had his fingers dragging themselves over me and eventually teasing me beneath my clothes. The wild moans that wanted to erupt from me as he strokes filled my head in a lustful haze as James began to enthrall me and his kiss hard over my shoulder. I began to bite my lip, trying to control them.
Don't hold it in.
Okay. As if to emphasize his command, he began to remove our last articles of clothing, turning me around in his arms and pinning me against the bedposts. I had to wrap my legs around him to keep myself up as he pressed his hips against the wood of the bed. I looked deep into James's eyes, becoming lost in them as I finally let go, feeling him take me at last and letting the pleasure ripple through my body in waves. My arms wrapped themselves around his neck as he pressed me against the wall and began to drive into me with a loving but hard fervor. My energy was slowly draining, but I didn't care. My mind was becoming a mess, but I didn't care. All I gave a damn about was at that point in time was James and I holding each other and riding through the immense pleasure between us. James knew everything about me, how to make me melt, how to make me keen. He loved to use everything in his power to make me feel absolutely loved and amazing, while I did my best to make him feel the same. Even as the end began to crash through us, our eyes spoke volumes of our deep passion and love for each other. My heart pounded wildly for James, and I dared to claim him as mine. He was completely and utterly mine, as I was completely and utterly his. Joyful tears gently dripped down my eyes from the feelings bursting in my heart, but I gripped James closer, desperate not to let him go. He did the same, pressing his lips to mine and capturing every loving sound I made for him. I lost count how many times we let ourselves go. I became absorbed in his kisses, his touches over my body, our love, and that I was barely awake by the time it all ended, with his arms around me. His breathing became my guide, and his body my solace. My hands gripped to him as my body naturally cuddled close to him, taking in his warmth. A small chuckle echoed from him as James petted my hair.
I love you so much.
I love you too, James. I will never let you go. You would survive. We would be okay. I felt safe in James's arms, and I'm sure he felt safe in mine. We would return to the human world and be okay. Tomorrow would decide everything. Alright. The day of the siege had finally dawned. We had arrived at the Demon Lord's castle, and we were as ready as we could be. Many armies, bearing different banners and colors, watched over the grounds before the castle, ready to rush in and lay waste to the Demon Lord and the remainder of his forces. All of us shared a common enemy, and upon his demise would we all finally know some form of peace. Even during the roll call of the major generals, the air became full of determination and pride.
Mirth! Avarice! Nadia! Fiorna! Aradum!
Each name became a mark on history. This was the war to bring freedom or destruction to the demon world. If the rebellion didn't win this fight, then this war would never end. If the rebellion won, then the world would finally be united in a hopefully peaceful rule. The hour before the battle was set to take place, my thoughts instantly ran back to our final meeting in Lilith Castle. Diana had pulled the leaders and us together, instructing us how exactly to proceed.
Zero, you will be joining Shadow and Sergeant in the front, taking care of the main army head-on. I expect that you will come out of it alive.
Yes, my lady.
Rabbit, Faye, you are in charge of range attacks and defense. We cannot allow any of those blasted imps getting to us from behind.
Yes, ma'am!
As Diana looked to me, I grew slightly fearful. I had to get into the Demon Lord's castle, but how exactly did Diana plan on getting me there?
You and your fiancé will take the side route straight to the castle.
Wait, huh?
We've organized our army to have our strongest on the front lines and against the tree line, giving us a side route for you to make your way straight to the castle.
If anything trickles into the side route, you'll be able to handle it. However, there is something I must ask of you.
What is it?
If you are indeed attacked, you need to defend your fiancé the entire way there. Do not let him use his energy.
Absolutely not.
When you get to the castle, I will be fighting one-on-one with the Demon Lord. If something should happen to me, then I need you to take over. She is not ready to fight him, and you need to be at full strength to finish him off.
I stared, listening and reaffirming the order. I couldn't lie, I was nervous. However, I was determined enough to see this through. I looked over at my fiancé with a confident smile. I got this, don't worry. Despite the worried look in his eyes, he nodded and held my hand, trusting me in my decision to agree with Diana's command. Diana rolled her shoulders and looked at the map draped over the war table between us all. Her gaze pierced into the parchment as the aura around her body pulsated in anger.
I will fly ahead and meet the Demon Lord head-on. No matter what happens, I will not allow that monster to live.
The pure determination and anger in her voice practically sent a shiver down my spine. She was set on seeing this through to the end, and I was sure that she was willing to even die if it meant taking the Demon Lord with her. The remaining incubi and the wives were asked to stay behind the army and guard the main base, where Rabbit and Faye were stationed. They needed as many eyes as possible to be in the back of the battle, so the 4 couples were perfect to keep things in check. As they agreed, the meeting ended and the mental preparations had begun. The idea of the upcoming battle scared me, sending waves of fear and worry up and down my body in response to the thought.
Nervous?
I would be lying if I said I wasn't. James smiled and held my hand tightly before bringing it up and kissing over it.
No matter what happens, we will end this, and you will see the human world again. You have my word.
I listened to him speak before nodding and taking in the deep breath. Everything would be okay. We would be fine. I had to believe in myself and get us to the castle when the time was right. Like a beacon, our forces became the banner of hope and strength for the rebellion. At the sight of Diana, many soldiers bowed or stared in awe and inspiration. Maybe it was her presence, or maybe it was for what she stood for, but as Diana stood at the cliffside of the mountain, the air became full of energy and power. My fiancé, Rabbit, Faye, and I stood behind her, as Diana stood at the ledge of the cliffside addressing the rebellion for their final battle. Her voice echoed across the field, booming and reverberating through the air like thunder.
Milites! Et hoc liberati esturei tramcun tuis omnibus conversiris! Sto vobiscum reducitic vos ad spem! Nocte! Lavabir mur! Arcem! Hostium sanguine!
We should probably down the volume a little bit. What is she saying?
She said that she stands with them and will help them gain their freedom from their enemy. Tonight, the Demon Lord's castle will be bathed in blood.
Really?
I don't think she means it literally, but she's riling up the soldiers for war, as she should.
I nodded as I stared at the back of Diana's head. A part of me felt a little intimidated and jealous of the power she had. She really could make any armies bow to her and obey her every whim. At the same time, I knew that she was doing the right thing for this world.
Ele Dio dominati sunt nostri! Nos destruet, ium mitere, profundissimum, inferni detractos!
Rabbit and Faye stepped forward and held their hands out towards the castle, focusing their energies and forcing the stone walls around it to crumble and dissolve down into the earth. Diana summoned her saber, letting it shine brilliantly as the purple taint over her skin began to twist and turn. Before my eyes, the taint on her back took shape, lifting off of Diana's skin and more twisted of demonic wings. I could only stare, jaw-dropped, as Diana's body lifted off the ground and began to fly over the legions, slowly gliding towards the castle.
To war! To battle!
After her final command, Diana's wings pulsated in the air, flapping gracefully as she swooped down and forward. She was charging and flying for the castle walls, saber bared and ready to spill blood. As the armies below began to bellow and march forward, Rabbit took hold of my shoulder and turned me away from the castle to face her.
Come, we must hurry.
Understanding the need for urgency, I nodded and rushed forward with the rest of the incubi towards the slope down the mountainside.
Everything is in order. Sergeant Diana's guard are at the front lines, while Shadow is with his legion to the west.
What of our route?
We've done what we can to keep your way clear. We'll try to make sure the battle won't break through the path.
I nodded, feeling the need to rush nip at my heels, pushing me forward. My fiancé seemed to agree, gripping my hand and walking at my pace alongside me. However, as we finally arrived at the forest line, Faye and Rabbit stopped, looking back at us.
Straight through here. The sound of the war will always be on your right, so do not get lost.
You'll be fine, though. Just follow the tree line.
In sync, my fiance and I nodded in acknowledgement before turning to see the other brothers and their wives. So, this is it.
Princess, brother, we'll see you in the end.
We have faith in you. You'll make it there, and we'll return to the human world soon.
Thank you, Irene.
Kick his dead body a couple times for me, alright? Right in the head.
We'll be right here rooting for you and watching your back, okay?
We'll finish this and rush in as soon as we can, alright?
Make sure you kick some serious ass. Show that old goat what he gets for messing with you.
We'll win this. We know we can.
You can do this. We'll see you soon, okay?
I smiled despite the nerves running through my body. I held onto my fiance's hand and gave a hard squeeze before receiving one back in kind. We'll finish this, then we'll go home. The group nodded before I slowly turned and looked into the tree line, took a deep breath, and rushed forward. Matching my speed, my left followed, weaving through the trees behind me to not lose sight of me. The journey became simple with us running through the trees. The sound of the war echoed beside us outside of the tree line and causing me to cover my ears a bit from the volume. But I shook my head and pressed forward, not wanting to become distracted. The goal was to get to the castle. I had to focus. We made our way through the thick of the forest, dodging each tree and root we came across. I could tell that something was ahead, causing me to grit my teeth and attempted to weave through whatever that was there. As I expected, we were rushing near a group of imps who were about to jump into the war fray from the side as a surprise attack, making me smirk. They were distracted enough not to notice us. I quickly took my sword from my scabbard and swung hard on the group of demons ahead of me, cleaving through the back of their necks. They couldn't even let out a scream as their voices became bubbly with blood. As they fell, I continued forward, gripping my sword and preparing in case we ran across this group. My incubi kept up the pace, understanding what I had done, but a little surprised at my skill. We continued to run forward, heading straight into another group of imps, and rushed past them, dropping my sword and slashing through the back of their leg, letting them fall forward, synchronized in pain. The imps fell out there as the others ahead of them turned and became shell-shocked at the sight. It must have been a big surprise to see a human cut down a group of it all at once, but it wasn't so friendly and merciful, especially in this war. As I lunged forward again and swung my sword in the air, I became precise with my attacks, cutting down as many as I could in as little attacks as I made. There were a couple of close calls, but training with Mirth had kept me on my toes, ready for anything. I don't know who Mirth is, so I think it's just another bug. My incubus, despite probably being surprised at my carnage, followed as I continued forward, fighting through every imp that came our way. Had lost count of how many crossed me, but I didn't care. All I cared about was getting to the castle. By the time we reached the end of the forest, there were a slew of dead bodies behind me. I stood at the tree line, panting and feeling waves of adrenaline and a lack of energy run through my veins. I panted for air, slowly focusing on calming down, as my energy quickly depleted from its adrenaline-filled high. I had to drop my sword, unable to hold it any longer. That was all I could do before my energy was expended and a wave of exhaustion went through my body. I began to fall forward, exhausted, but my fiancé, however, quickly rushed forward and caught me in his arms.
Whoa! Are you okay?
I guess everything turned out okay. I hope, from what's happening so far. I was sure I was gonna get killed by these imps because I didn't feel like I was prepared enough, because I lost Shadow as my trainer. But I guess everything's okay? Huh? I looked to see James staring down at me with a deeply concerned gaze. We were safe for the moment, so I merely smiled up at him with a nod. I'm fine. I promise to protect you, like you protect me. James let out a small laugh, kissing my forehead and hugging me to him.
That you did. I'm so proud to call you mine.
I hugged him back, feeling relief that we had finally arrived at the castle and we were about to rush inside. As we slowly pulled away, James lifted me up and helped me to my feet.
Will you be alright?
I nodded, shaking off the exhaustion from my mind. I was ready to end this. I looked up at the castle gates and felt a rush of determination run through my body. Let's go finish this. With that, James and I rushed forward to the castle. The final battle had begun. The ringing sound of clashing swords greeted me and James as we sprinted into the castle and towards the main hall. James placed a hand in front of me as I spotted the battle waging at the foot of the throne dais. Diana and the Demon Lord slammed their swords against each other over and over in a violent repetition, with Diana leveled to her tall opponent in flight. Just from the force behind their swings, you would think that their swords would break and bend. The sound of their steel, however, could not cover the snarls that erupted from each of them as they pressed against the clash between them.
It's over, you brute bastard!
We'll see about that!
With a heavy grunt, the Demon Lord pushed his sword forward with a pulse of red energy, causing Diana to fly back and slam into a pillar with a painful thud.
Ah!
Diana crumpled to the ground, her wings instinctively folding in against her back from the impact. However, it took only a second for her to recover and look up with a rejuvenated glare. Vaulting off the ground, Diana flew at the Demon Lord once more and slammed her sword into his, a large burst of purple flames erupting from between their weapons.
I will send you to hell where you belong!
James and I watched in silence as Diana and the Demon Lord danced their deadly duel, not wanting to get in the way of either of their rage. After all, James was merely a backup and Diana seemed fine so far. For some reason, however, as I stared at Diana, something about her hits looked almost effortless, like something was guiding her sword to land each strike. Was she that skilled in combat? After a flurry of deadlocks, Diana finally managed to swing her sword at an angle, slicing the back of the Demon Lord's hand and making him drop his weapon.
You!
The Demon Lord quickly stepped back and reared to his other hand back, forming a large red orb in his hand. However, as soon as he thrust it forward, it began to dissolve and dissipate in the air, vanishing completely before it even reached Diana's body.
What?
Diana stared in shock at the occurrence, taking in that his attack didn't hit her, before she slowly grew a smirk on her face and a golden glow over her blood-red irises.
Looks like you're all out of energy.
With another angry growl, the Demon Lord repeated his action, only to stare in disbelief as it evaporated into the air. It was large enough when it was in his hand, yet it vanished all too quickly. Something was wrong. Diana didn't seem to care as she lifted her hand back behind her and formed a large purple orb in her palm before shooting it forward. The orb slammed into the Demon Lord's chest and pushed him back against the pillar harshly, forming larger cracks in the stone at the impact.
It's over!
With her battle cry, Diana gripped onto her saber with both hands and flew forward, charging to secure the Demon Lord through the chest. As she began to fly forward, I gasped at the sight of white feathers slowly painting over Diana's demonic wings. Angels! Angels were here. Wait! Diana wasn't listening. Her eyes became completely glossed over in a gold color as a strange white glow began to emanate from her form like a holy light and guided her forward towards her intended victim. Within a mere blink, Diana had run her saber through the Demon Lord's chest, piercing through his heart and impaling him against the pillar. James and I could do nothing but stare in shock at what Diana had done and what was happening to the succubus in question. Her body let out an almost ethereal white glow as she snarled into the Demon Lord's face.
May Satan take you and tear you apart in the pits of hell.
My body shuddered in fear at the sound of her voice. While she naturally had some sort of demonic resonance as she spoke, something else was laced into her voice, giving it an almost celestial lift and tone. The Demon Lord's eyes glazed over and soon as lost their light, as ever so slowly went limp over the blade embedded within him, blood slowly dripping from his mouth and onto Diana's forearms. Diana, however, released the handle of her blade and glided back, shaking her arms to get rid of the Demon Lord's blood. Despite what I normally expected from Diana, the succubus didn't seem to care that her mortal enemy had fallen at last. She didn't even care that her wings had become angelic and covered in beautiful white feathers. If it wasn't for her tainted demon skin and horns, I would imagine Diana at that moment to be confused as the angels I imagined from the human world. The reality of the situation, however, was apparent. Something was wrong with Diana.
It is done. It is over.
I looked to James, seeing his cautious but deadly glare burn itself into Diana's form. As she looked up at him, eyes still glazed over in a gold glow.
It isn't truly over, is it?
Diana stared at the pair of us for a moment before lowering herself onto her feet on the floor and letting her new angelic wings fold against her back patiently. With an almost sickening sweet smile, Diana lifted her hands towards James and beckoned to him.
You are correct. You must take your throne, Restro.
My anger flared at the sound of his true name escaping her lips, but my soul began to quiver in fear. Diana was being controlled by angels, and now she seemed to be an instrument for James's destiny. I'm surprised we still haven't seen an appearance of his mom. I know James's mom is an orb or something, or maybe she's even dead, but her voice changed it. Well, I'm still thinking it is. Changed his destiny, or wanted to change it to what his destiny would be if I hadn't been around. But there's not apparent, so I don't know what to think. I guess that might just be another unsolved mystery that will just stay there and make you think for a while. James, however, remained at my side, glaring hard at Diana, still with a hand across my body in protection.
You do not have permission to use my name with such familiarity.
And why do you say that? I am the queen of the demon world now, and you are my betrothed.
Diana ran her hands through her hair and over her horns. Ew! Drawing them down her neck and over each curve of her upper body seductively. We know what because of Shadow, we know what that means. This was definitely not Diana. But staying, that's terrible, kind of feel like that's kind of harassment. Well, it's not harassment, it is harassment. The angel has control over her body and making her do things she wouldn't want to do with James since she has zero.
My mind, body, and soul are completely yours, as is the domination of this world. I share these pleasures and power with you, with the purest love from the bottom of my heart, as your true, universally intended bride.
James reached his hand back and took my hand, knowing that her words were digging into my mind with edges of betrayal and annoyance. I knew James wouldn't accept her, but I also knew that this was not Diana, so who knew what the angel controlling her would do next. Diana tilted her head to the side, slowly lowering herself onto her knees and stretching her arms by her sides, bearing herself, oh my god, herself to us.
Unless you desire me to be your slave, I will happily give you the throne and eternally serve you until the end of time.
Enough! Release her and reveal yourself, Seraph!
I gripped James's hand, staring wide-eyed at Diana as she simply chuckled and guided her hands together, pressing her palms between her breasts and leaning back to stare at the high marble ceiling.
This child of Lilith is offering herself to you, demon, yet you refuse to take it.
You know my answer.
It is a foolish answer. This demoness can become a vessel of power for you, the mother of your lineage. What more can you desire that the human can hope to provide?
Stop it! This time I had to interject. This was wrong and underhanded. Whatever spell Diana was under gripped her tightly enough to become some sort of twisted submissive to James, and no part of me appreciated it. The angel was some sort of sick and twisted being that needed to be stopped somehow. James finally stepped forward, forming a sword in his hand and staring down at it in serious thought.
An angel like you can never understand the desires I hold.
That is because your desires are misplaced. You know deep in your heart that you desire to rule over this world. Your demonic blood craves the power.
I watched James gaze deep into the steel of his blade, locking eyes with himself. Still, he continued to speak.
It is true that some part of me wishes to rule this world. Some darker, unfeeling shadow of the past that was raised to live and become the ultimate lord of this plane.
As James gripped the handle of his sword tightly, he shifted his gaze to Diana's body.
But my heart knows where it belongs. With the human who loves me as I love her!
My heart fluttered in my chest at James's words, feeling every ounce of passion and determination embedded with each sound. Diana, however, let out a dark laugh.
Love, how fleeting. Your defiance comes from such a weak emotion.
As Diana finally straightened back up, I stepped back from the sight of her eyes. Instead of black pupils, her golden eyes held two dark crosses burning within her lost irises. The smirk on her face intensified almost like a Cheshire cat's sickening grin.
Allow me to show you a power greater than love!
With the hard flap of her wings, Diana jutted forward, forming another saber in her hand and arcing it across James. Her target countered in reply, clashing his sword to hers with a heavy clang. I instantly jumped back, away from the fight, as James and Diana began to clash swords again and again. James's face showed pure concentration as Diana's cackled in both an insane glee and obsessive desire.
Fight however you like! You cannot escape your destiny!
I will, and you will not stop me!
The speed of their clashes increased. The rapid sound of steel beating steel crashed through the air like a wave of violent drums. They were equally matched, and neither seemed to be close to giving in. How long would this fight go on for? I knew Diana was probably exhausted from the fight, but the angel was working through her, so there was a chance that her exhaustion wouldn't matter. Then again, James had not lifted a finger yet in this war, so he had energy to spare. The entire situation became full of confusion and concern as James and Diana continued to duel without hesitation or need for air. As James took a heavy swing towards Diana, the succubus leaned back and sank gracefully on her feet, using her wings to ease her descent and stance while she licked her lips.
Love is a fleeting game! Those who expect it to bring happiness will only experience sorrow in the end!
You're wrong! I was tired of this angel trying to get in between James and me. Enough was enough. I stepped forward, trying desperately to find more energy within me to fight alongside James, but spoke out regardless. You don't know anything about love.
I know more than you ever will, human. I have lived for eons serving heaven, and have watched your kind rant and rave all about love and its existence.
Diana lifted her hand to her chest, grasping it as over where her heart was, and almost laughed at me in my words.
You humans use love for the most meaningless of things! I love him, I love her, I love this, I love that! You claim love to be a powerful emotion, yet you can't even give it the power it supposedly deserves, as you use it for everything! I've watched that word fall on deaf ears. I've seen lives destroyed, despite love guiding them forward. The mere word has become a throwaway amalgam of letters, used to express minor joy for things that will decay and die in the end.
Love is stronger than you think. I knew deep down that the emotion of love was stronger than this angel could have ever imagined. This wasn't something I could debate against when I had experienced it firsthand with the man it was trying to take away. Diana laughed and shook her head, guffawing at my exclamation before stretching her arms out to her side.
Love is weak! I have claimed the body of a succubus who is full of true love, and not even her love could stop me!
I stared wide at Diana. She was in love? Even more so, she had pure and true love? But if love was the factor behind control, then something was off. I shook my head and glared once more at Diana, burying my gaze into her eyes as the angel who was controlling her movements. Your controlling her has nothing to do with love. You're taking advantage of her being weak from the fight with the Demon Lord. Finally, Diana's face melted into a glare as she bared her teeth at me and growled.
You know nothing! Less than nothing! Filthy, unclean human! You open your mouth and spout nonsense and forget your place in the universe!
That's what humans do. Diana's saber began to glow in a friendly white color as Diana's hand began to quake, holding it. Was Diana fighting back, or was the angel's anger shaking her limbs with rage? I wasn't able to tell.
I will erase you!
A hard flap of Diana's wings made Diana fly forward towards me, sword held high to rip me in two. However, her blade was met with James's as he rushed up and guarded me.
You!
James pressed against Diana's saber, his body glowing a dark gold color in response to her ever-growing aura.
Your battle is with me, Angel. I will not let you touch her!
With a heavy snarl, Diana pressed herself against the deadlock, leaning towards James and practically frothing at the mouth.
I will make you yield!
Unaffected by her scream, James summoned a burst of yellow energy forward, knocking Diana back towards the throne dais. Diana flapped back and floated in the air gracefully, shaking her head before sneering at James. Like, if you want his destiny to happen, and if you kill him, then it'll be all useless. The demons sprang at each other once more, slamming their swords together in hopes to push the other away or strike their opponents down. Purple and gold clashes through the room, the speed of their duel growing exponentially with each hit and parry. Watching Diana, however, I could tell that the exhaustion was hitting her hard physically. Her hits became wild and thrown by adrenaline instead of the purpose and intent to kill. The angel wouldn't be able to hold on for long. James was putting up a good fight despite this, easily blocking and dodging her attacks before pummeling a barrage of his own, laced with gold energy that burst between their swords at each hit. As soon as an opening became available once again, James gripped onto Diana's wrist and twisted it back, making her release her saber with a painful scream and causing him to drop his own sword.
Ah! Enough of this!
Using the momentum of his attack, James spun Diana around so her arms were almost dislocated behind her and slammed to his feet and the back of her knees, causing her to buckle forward and land with two painful thuds. James, however, pushed Diana farther down and slammed her body onto the ground, trapping her arms against her back with a foot and gripping onto Diana's large wings with both hands. Ugh, no. I gasped. He wasn't gonna rip them off of her, right? With a concentrated glare on the back of Diana's head, his fist tightened around Diana's feathery wings and suddenly it sent a wave of golden flames through them. The fire stopped at Diana's back, only consuming the wings in gold and red flame. Diana screamed, echoed through the room, bouncing off the floor and walls in the frenzy as she could do nothing but feel the flames engulf her wings. The feathers that painted over them began to burn and dissolve into ash, falling around her. This is a little bit off topic, but I went to go see X-Men Apocalypse last week, and there's a scene with an angel in it, and oh my god, I was in cringe mode. I couldn't even I can't even watch. I'm not very good at those type of things, if I actually see them. Gore is that, well, it wasn't really gore, it was just ugh. But yeah. Soon enough, the pain became unbearable enough to force Diana to make her wings vanish back into her skin, where two large burn marks signed themselves. Oh man, now she's scarred.
I'm sorry.
Not giving Diana a single ounce of mercy, James dug his foot beneath her body and flipped her over, causing her back to arc in pain from the impact of her burns on the marble. Smoke snaked from her back as she gasped loudly. As Diana opened her mouth and let out her breath, James quickly grasped into her neck, squeezing tightly and causing the succubus beneath him to choke. James! Neither demon would hear me as Diana grabbed into James's wrists and began to claw them, desperate to make him let go of her. Her eyes began to flicker from gold to their original clear white and red colors as Diana could do nothing but spasm through the lack of air. Stop him! I needed to stop him before he killed her! The angel wasn't worth her death! I rushed forward and grabbed onto James's arm, making him look up at me as I knelt down beside him. James, stop it! You'll kill Diana! James stared at me, taking in what I had said with the same surprised look before, looking down at the succubus beneath him and glaring hard. Was he going to kill her anyway?
Come out and fight me!
With a burst of energy surging through James's hand, Diana arced back, a spray of frothy saliva and blood erupting from her mouth towards the far wall. Ew. James's grip had loosened around her neck, but Diana's body continued to spasm from James's attack. Diana's eyes rolled into the back of her head, finally fading from gold to white as she gasped for air and her body relaxed at last. As Diana's body finally went limp and settled onto the marble, a large white aura of smoke swept from her chest and shot itself at the throne dais, settling on the steps and slowly growing taller in place. The white smoke finally formed a familiar cloaked being who was arced forward from his veiny hands tensed out beside him. Something about the angel, however, seemed different than before, as if he had somehow gained energy from being within Diana.
You filthy cur! You continue to try and defy your destiny when it is useless!
James stood and glared hard at the angel, forming his sword once again in his hand and pointing it towards his new opponent. His body began to glow and the room began to brighten at his golden aura.
I have no such destiny to remain in this world. My life is bound to the one I love, not to an empty chair gained through blood.
You will have no choice in the matter!
Ow. Like 2 bullets? James and the angel rushed at each other and collided with James's sword against the angel's bare hands. I expected James's blade to tear through the angel's flesh, but the steel pressed against the angel's hands like it was grazing stone. I'm gonna turn it down, it's like too loud. There we go. The angel gripped to James's blade and slowly began to crush it beneath his hands, causing the magic surrounding it to falter and fade. James and I stared wide-eyed as if the angel was able to rip the broken piece of the sword off and toss it into the side like it was plastic. Determined still, James shot his energy through his sword and reformed the blade, going once again for another attack, only to be blocked by the angel's forearm. Upon impact, the steel of the blade shattered like glass, falling to the ground.
I am no mere servant of heaven, demon. I am the keeper of destiny, the scribe of fates. You cannot defeat me no matter what spells you conjure.
Upon his final words, the angel pressed his hands forward and slammed them against James's chest, forcing him to fly back and slam into the far wall. James! Instantly began to rush towards him, but found myself being lifted off the ground by the back of my neck and pulled away from James towards the angel.
No!
I grabbed the back of my neck, feeling the angel's hand grip it tightly and keep my body afloat somehow. His hand felt indeed like stone and concrete, grazing against my skin roughly and almost tearing at the flesh as I struggled. Let me go!
I should have forced you to choose from the beginning, demon. This human will not see reason to let you go, but I know that you will see reason in the offer I will graciously give you now.
The angel held my body out, dangling in the air like a doll, as I flailed and clawed up the angel's arm. My nails merely scratched against his stone skin as they felt my energy slowly deplete even further than it was in my spirit.
Accept your fate, demon, and I will bring her back to the human world unharmed. Refuse, and I will release her to the gates of hell for the devil spawn to ravish.
As he spoke of James's potential refusal, a large wave of heat burst out beneath my feet, causing me to look down and scream at the sight on the ground. Beneath my body was a large open circle with red flames flaring out of it. Between the flames, I could barely make out the sight of hundreds of hands reaching up to try and stretch themselves through the hole above them and toward me. Each hand burned red, sent waves of remembrance, till my body as an image of Malix appeared in my head. And then I screamed, ah! My fear only spurred me to flail harder in the hold I was in, uncaring of the friction his hand was causing my skin. I could feel blood gather and dribble on the back of my neck, flesh tearing open from my attempts. Oh my gosh. James stared up at me, quaking from the fear of the situation. We were far away from him, where he couldn't reach me even if he sprinted as I dropped. I was left at James' decision. However, something in James's eyes changed. A dark bolt painted over his eyes as his body began to float in the air.
Let her go!
And As you wish!
I gasped, managed to rush into my body as the angel's hand on my neck vanished without a trace. My body began to fall into the open pit below me, a wave of intense heat reaming at my legs before I felt a strong pair of arms wrap around me and pull me forward. Dang, he got super speed. What? I looked up to see James gripping me tightly, flying back away from the angel with me encased in his tight hold. As we reached the doorway from the main hall, James landed and set me down, keeping his intense glare on the angel by the throne. As the angel made their way towards us, I could feel the air become colder with each step he took.
You cannot smite me, demon. It is useless to try!
If I cannot kill you, then I will send you to a place you can never escape from.
On James's word, a large set of purple ethereal tendrils snaked through the angel's hands and neck, tugging him back roughly. James and I looked back to see Diana risen from her unconscious state and glaring daggers in the back of the angel's cloak as her hand connected to the tendrils around her target. It was mildly frightening to see her eyes completely coated in gold, just like James's eye as she snarled at her now captured victim.
How dare you defile me!
James, in retaliation, formed a large wall between himself and the angel, pushing him back in time with Diana's tendrils pulled. Each time the angel dispelled one of the tendrils on his body, James pushed forward and Diana formed another tendril in its place. It became a team effort, forcing the angel back to balance his feet over the edge of the hell pit he opened. However, despite each rough tug and push James and Diana gave him, the angel continued to balance himself. With a burst of white light, the angel completely dissolved the tendril of the magic wall, jutting upwards and floating high in the air, tense and growling. The two demons, however, wouldn't let him hang around for long. Simultaneously, James and Diana pounced off the ground and flew over the air at the angel. Diana on her summoned but damaged wings, and James in his new powers. Diana summoned her saber and James formed a sword, clashing them against the angel's body. The blades didn't break, but simply pounded against the cloak the angel wore as they were hitting armor. The angel became frazzled as he began to defend himself against two opponents, each not giving him an ounce of mercy at their attacks. It was almost dizzying to see Diana and James fly around their target, taking shots at him at a ridiculous speed. Each hit resulted in a loud clang of steel against stone and the bounce around the room in an endless but random cycle. Watching Diana and James encircle the angel with attacks was like watching gold and purple fireworks going off against the moon. Suddenly, Diana's saber was launched out of her hands, causing Diana to float back a bit in shock while James attacked the angel head-on. Oh dang, that scared me. As the angel knocked back James's attack, Diana swooped up behind the angel and entangled her arms around his and locked her legs around his cloak while pressing herself between his wings.
What?
Max!
At her cry, purple and black lightning began to spatter and shake around the angel and Diana, freezing them in the air but electrocuting both.
James! No!
The incubus didn't falter as he gathered energy into his blade and making it gleam in almost ethereal and godlike glow.
No!
It's over!
With a large shout, James shot himself forward and impaled his sword into the angel's body, successfully ramming it in through his body and skewering both the angel and Diana. Oh my god, Diana's gonna die. Gold and purple lightning wrapped around the angel, both from Diana's spell and James's blade, causing the wings on his back to burn away into bones, then to ash. The angel's hands slowly began to darken into an ashy black color from the electrocution. James ripped his blade out of his two victims as Diana finally pushed herself away from the angel, leaving him to float in the air from him, frozen in the pain. As the angel began to fall, he let out a deathly scream before falling into the hell pit below. The angel's body vanished into the hell pit before a large burst of red and orange flame burst from its opening. The chaotic screams of devils erupted from the pit as the flames began to die out and vanished. Soon enough, the pit slowly closed itself, having been fed a proper body to seal it away. Kind of like when Diana was going to do this to us. First one. I collapsed onto my knees, feeling the drain of the entire situation hit me like a ferocious wave. It was over. It was over at last. For how long? The entire situation became a chaotic mess. James forced the angel of fate into a pit of hell. Did this mean that James was free? What about the angel? Too many questions rang in my head but stopped as James landed beside me and knelt down to me, lifting my chin and making me look up at him. He looked worn out, panting for air from the experience, but still had a kind smile. It was so satisfying feeling James with me. I had barely noticed his black scar on his chest vanish from his skin as I became lost in his eyes in relief.
It's over now.
I could only nod, feeling the slow growth of elation trickled into my chest as I looked up at James. He was alive. We were still together, and the angel was gone. If it wasn't over, I was sure that other angels would have come at us. I wrapped my arms around James, relieved that everything was over and we were at peace at last. Diana, however, let out a pained gasp from where she had fallen, gripping the open wound in her stomach and panting. James and I looked over in surprise as Diana began coughing out blood and calling out,
"Settle!"
On her command, a burst of white light emerged in front of her body before revealing her half-angel guard. He's half-angel? I mean, I knew he had angel something. Looks like I learned something new that I'll probably learn more about if I were to offer him training me. Looking around him at the new surroundings and locking his sights down at his fallen mistress.
Isaiah!
Quickly, Sarah dropped to his knees and placed his hands over her wound while he wrapped an arm around her shoulders and back. Diana winced and continued to pant for air, gritting her teeth.
What happened? Who did?
Shut up and heal me.
Sarah nodded in quick obedience before muttering to himself and closing his eyes. White energy flowed through his hands and into Diana's wound. To my astonishment, the wound slowly began to close up and stick together, like it was never there. As Diana let out a sigh, she closed her eyes and relaxed into Sarah's arms, laying her head against his upper arm. Sarah let out a brief breath of relief as well, moving his hand beneath Diana's knees and lifting her up bridal style. James and I stood as soon as Sarah did, facing him as he turned to us and glared hard at James. I gripped onto James's hand, stepping forward to be between the boys as Sarah began to walk towards us.
What happened?
We fought an angel. It has been properly disposed of.
The air in the room once again chilled as Sarah kept his gaze on my husband, but he's my fiancé. A faint white glow surrounding his body. It faded, however, at his mistress's voice.
Settle.
Sarah looked down to see Diana look at him and bringing a hand to his cheek. The tension in his eyes faded at the sight and feeling of her actions, making me release the fearful breath I was holding in. Without another word against my incubus, Sarah turned and walked around me and James. He reached the door, however. As he reached the door, he turned his head towards us.
It would seem that your destiny has been broken. Well done.
How do you know this?
Sarah didn't speak again before leaving us alone. James and I watched him leave before relaxing into each other's arms with me laying my head on James's shoulder. I can only remember Sarah's words as he vanished into the dark of the castle hall. If Sarah was right, then James had enough power to break his own destiny, and him sending the angel packing only confirmed it. Thank God. It's over.
Yes, it is.
James and I held each other tightly, taking in the situation. The war was over. The angel hunt for James was apparently over. We were safe now, and we could go home. All we could do now was let out a sigh and cherish the silence that followed. We would go home soon. It was over. The war was finally over. As the smoke cleared, we were victorious. The soldiers left standing were the ones to cheer in victory. The sky became littered in the howls and cries of the joyful and happy. The tyranny of the Demon Lord had ended. But what now? Home was now possible. We could go back to the human world and we could live our lives as we wanted. It was something I desperately wanted, and yet my body was not ready to make the journey just yet. We had to celebrate the success of the war, after all. As the full moon rose over Lilith's castle towards the dawn, the entirety of the demon world celebrated the endless drink and food, laughter, and dancing. It was so unreal, but the courtyard that I could see was filled with smiles and happy faces. We had stayed for one more night, traveling back to Lilith Castle to rest and return home as healthy as we could be. After all, we had gone through a war. One more night in the demon world wasn't going to hurt us. While the majority of the rebellion danced in the courtyard, I remained with the incubi and the rebel leaders who were all in the royal hall, having their own celebration. Drinks were shared and battle stories were exchanged, making some laugh and others roll their eyes. I found myself intrigued at the story Sergeant told about the front line. As I looked to Diana, however, she simply kept quiet with a small smile on her face. She looked at the incubi and the rebel leaders in silence before walking away from the little party we had. As if she knew I was staring at her, Diana looked over at me and slightly gestured with her hand to follow her. I followed, curious as to where she was going. I made sure to remain quiet as I separated from the rest of the group and followed her out of the room into the hall. The entire journey, Diana didn't speak a word. Even Sarah didn't follow her, most likely being told that she wanted to speak to me alone. Diana led me through the castle, up a couple steps of stairs, in what looked to be a royal bedroom with a balcony. Was this a guest room? It was untouched and I could smell the very faint scent of dust. Why did she bring me here? My throat is going. I've been talking non-stop for, let's see how long? An hour and 11 minutes. Dang. Okay. Diana stepped into the room using her magic to ignite the candelabras and air out of the room by opening the balcony window. Before I could ask, however, Diana finally spoke up.
I have to thank you, dear.
For what?
For aiding us in this war. We've been fighting the Demon Lord for so long. We thought the war would never end. As terrible as the circumstance was, if you hadn't been summoned here, we probably would have still been fighting now.
Diana walked to the balcony and leaned against the railing, staring into a dark night sky. The light from the room illuminated from her form as she gazed at the stars. Despite the situation around us, the air seemed calm with a faint echo of celebrations whispering through the night. I walked over and stood beside her, leaning against the balcony, and looked at Diana as she smiled and let out a chuckle.
To be very honest, I didn't expect to ever see you again. After I took your energy that night, I vowed to never deal with humans again. No clairvoyance could have told me about you coming into play in this war.
I wasn't exactly counting on coming here. But at least I gotta help bring peace here. Diana smiled, nodding to me. I really was glad to help her bring peace to a world. It wasn't out of pride or vanity, it was a mere matter of helping people clearly in need.
We owe you much thanks.
I'll accept your thanks when I finally get married.
Oh, I had almost forgotten.
I tilted my head at her. What was she talking about? Diana lifted one of her hands towards the sky and waved her hand through the air, making a soft purple mist glow around her fingers. Within seconds, the mist morphed and formed itself into a lavender-colored lily, resting peacefully between Diana's fingers. She brought it down and presented it to me with a kind gaze.
A gift, my dear.
A gift? I slowly took the flower out of Diana's hands and inspected it visually. It was light, but I could feel a small soft glow of magic emanating from the stem and its petals. The blooms reminded me of a human world lily, but it was something about it seemed otherworldly.
A flower known only to demons of Lilith. We call it the Flower of Lilith, because these flowers were said to have been created when Lilith first appeared in the abyssal plains.
I stared at Diana, not understanding why she was giving me such a gift. She chuckled at my confusion and leaned against the railing, continuing her explanation.
It is also a flower we succubi use when we marry.
Use? What do you mean? Diana chuckled again before she gently took the flower from my hands and tucked it behind my ear. As she settled against my ear, I felt mist circle around my head and form into a flower crown of lavender lilies. The way Diana looked at me made me feel like I was in my bridal wear already.
A human you may be, but Lilith would have been proud to see you marrying one of her own. These flowers represent her blessing, and may only crown the worthy.
I felt a blush run across my cheeks. This was a blessing? I slowly reached up and ran my fingers along the flower crown adorning my head. I felt the soft petals against my fingertips. They were almost pulsing with energy. I felt both flattered and honored that a simple flower felt that I was worthy enough to crown my head. Diana let out a sigh and looked back to the sky, making me do the same. One would have expected the sky to be full of smoke or smell of war's aftermath, but the sky was clear and fresh air drifted through my nose as I inhaled. I was indeed in another world, and tonight was my last night in it.
Well, you did it! Congratulations! You've made it to the end of your story. I have to say, I am very surprised at how it turned out. Nevertheless, I'm glad things worked out in the end, whether it was for the better or otherwise. I mean, not only did James defeat his father, the dreaded Demon Lord, but both of you took out a band of angels! Seriously! That's wild! But I guess it was for the best, or else they would have kept trying to hunt you down and make James the king of the demon world. Angels. So persistent. Anyways, you've been through a lot, so why don't we skip to... Huh? You want to know what happened after the war? Well, I mean, I guess I could tell you. After the war was finished, the entire rebellion celebrated. Word spread far and wide about the rebellion's success, and soon every kingdom in the abyssal plains had become united with the new authority.
So I did good? I didn't fail? I mean, obviously, I think I'm gonna get a decent ending, but, like, I still lost my... I guess all that matters is as long as my relationship with James is good, I don't need anybody to train me.
You would think demons would be more hostile towards each other, being demons and all, but the threat of the Demon Lord was what brought the entire world together. The entire world united under one banner, the Lilith Crest. Diana became the sovereign of the entire plane, accepted and loved by practically everyone because of her devotion to the world and her bravery in the war. Sero, as devoted as ever, remained by her side as her loyal bodyguard. Diana became one of the most beloved rulers in all of Demon World history. Her natural heart of gold led her to lead the world to a prosperous future, one filled with peace and happiness. The other rebel leaders supported her, eventually changing the caste system of the world and slowly working their way towards a plane as equal and peaceful as it could be. Diana had her suspicions, of course, as any monarch would, but if they had any sort of bad thoughts about her before, they certainly didn't during the recreation of the world. And I believe that is everything that happened after, well, except for your story anyway. James and you returned home and prepared once again for your marriage. Everything was taken care of before he found you, so no one knew the wiser.
Well, that's good. I wonder how long we were gone for, like 2 days?
Huh? How do I know? Well, I have my ways. Maybe you should check it out.
The wedding was perfect, the reception even more so. Everything that happened to me before the wedding was completely washed away by the nerves that rushed through me and the joy I felt when I finally said, I do. As the wedding bells chimed and the tears rang through the air as James and I finally kissed, I could almost see my future laid out before me, and it was gorgeous. I could go on and on about the wedding and the honeymoon, but honestly, after the war, I was more concerned about living my life afterwards. Our lives escalated to new heights after we officially became husband and wife. James helped the Anderson Toy Company skyrocket through the business world, now an official heir, Anderson heir. I stood beside him, aiding him in every way possible. As for me, I began to go through my own success in life, dedicating myself to become exactly what I wanted to be. After all, my husband was a CEO. Nothing was barred for me. If I put the same amount of work in as I did in the demon world, then I was going to be okay. However, but there was never a day that went by that I didn't think about what was happening in the abyssal plains. It was a heavy chapter of my life, one that tested the love between me and James. The memory of the angel that chased after us would always run shivers down my spine, reminding me that, at any moment, an angel could lash out at us once more. Still, I was confident that we would get through it and stay together no matter what came our way. Demon, devil, angel, it didn't matter to us. We were unstoppable together. The faint memory of my own power slightly tingled through me every time I grew confident, eagerly reminding me that I had strength of my own. I would never let anyone come between me and James ever again. The slow settling of it all rumbled in my mind as I laid in bed, holding James close to me. I was so happy to see him every morning, even more so now to occasionally glimpse his wedding ring resting on his ring finger. Ah. I couldn't help myself from brushing my fingers over his gorgeous black locks, staring at his closed eyes. How did I ever deserve you? It seemed so unreal holding him so close to me. How lucky was I to have a man who not only was strong, but also intelligent and charming, all in one package. The demon part of me almost became... Part of me, yeah, I'm totally a demon, of him almost became an extra dab of cream on the top. Whenever I looked at him, my heart would overflow in joy. This was indeed true love, and I was the luckiest person in the universe. I softly leaned in and kissed his forehead, needing to show my love even as he slept. He protected me with his arms around me, and I would show him my gratitude for as long as we were together. My kiss, however, slowly made James begin to stir in my arm. I gasped a bit before giggling, seeing his eyes flutter open. The sight of his tired, whiskey-colored eyes made my heart do giddy flips, knowing that they were always going to look at me out of love. Good morning.
Good morning.
James nuzzled into the pillow beneath his head, taking a moment to wake up at last before smiling up at me. I smiled back, sliding my body closer to James and nuzzling his chest. How did you sleep?
I slept well, but waking up to your smile is so much better.
A red blush rushed across my face before I buried my face in James's shoulder, making him laugh and hug me against his chest. The content hum that rumbled in his chest made me smile despite the embarrassment on my cheeks. I was going to experience this every morning, waking up in his arms and feeling complete within them. James gently kissed over my head before squeezing around my waist, making me look up at him and become lost in his loving gaze.
What about you?
I let a cheesy grin pace across my face before pecking his chin with my lips slightly, making him stare wide at me in surprised amusement. Sleep was good, but I'd rather be awake with you. James chuckled and kissed my forehead, hugging me tightly to him.
Well then, what shall we do today?
Huh? Don't you have work? James shook his head and caressed my cheek lovingly. I unconsciously nuzzled his palm, loving the warmth radiating from it, as I stared at James patiently, listening.
I managed to grab a couple days off.
How many days?
How does a whole week sound?
I grinned and squeezed him slightly in a hug in my own, making him laugh a bit and kiss my nose sweetly. You're all mine for a week?
For a whole week. No, I'm all yours regardless of that.
Okay. The cheesiness is all good. To hear him claim that made my heart skip a beat. No one else to lay claim to him but me, and I was thrilled at that. I rested my head on his chest, listened to his heartbeat as he cradled my head to him and rested his cheek against my hair.
So, any ideas? We could go into Chicago and watch a couple of shows, or we could even fly out somewhere if you want.
I bet it'd be fun to go to Chicago. I've always wanted to go see some plays over there. We can do anything?
Anything you want.
I thought for a moment, trying to decide what to do. There were so many things available to us, but As I felt myself melt into James's embrace, I closed my eyes and rubbed my head against his chest. How about we lay here for a bit and decide later? With a nod and a laugh, James gave me a loving squeeze and shifted to make himself comfy, allowing me to use his chest as my pillow. While the idea of adventure was enticing, we could save it for when we were ready to really get out of bed.
As my beautiful wife wishes.
I love you, James. James lifted my chin slightly and stared deep into my eyes with adoring gaze and smile, making every part of me practically swoon at the sight.
I love you too. More than anyone in the world. I will always be here beside you every morning and every night for as long as we live.
I believed every word. I let his words embed themselves into my heart, and I will remember them forever. As James finally kissed me, locking lips with mine, he sealed his words. His destiny was to be with me, and I to be with him. No angel could change that, no demon could break that. And that was my perfect happily ever after. And my destiny is with you. Yay! I was so worried I was gonna get the bad end because I chose, but as I said before, about leaving Shadow, but I guess as long as there's a good relationship with James and any other incubi, it shouldn't matter what I do. And make sure Diana stays alive. So yeah, that has been James's route, and I guess that means we're gonna move on to another incubi. I think the order went Damien, James, Sam, Eric, Matthew? That sounds about right. But yeah, I'm just gonna say next is most likely Sam. Or maybe it's Eric. I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah, I'm gonna say, I'm pretty sure. We'll see. We'll see what it's either Sam or Eric, but I'm pretty sure it's Sam. It's my guess. So, or maybe it's Eric. I don't know. I don't remember. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.